Hey guys, how's it going? So this last week's been a bit of a challenge for me. My papou died, my grandfather, and then today was his funeral. So a lot of emotions going on right now. My other grandfather on my dad's side, he had died before I was even born, so my papou was my only, and he was a really great guy. So I just thought I would make a video about him, kind of honor him, and if you're so inclined to hear stories about a funny old man, then watch the video. um, he wasn't an immigrant. He was born in the U.S. His parents were immigrants, but he didn't learn English until he went to school, and I don't think he finished high school. So he had a Greek accent when he spoke. Another thing to keep in mind whenever you would have met him is he has Asperger's, which is a form of autism, and I think his concentration was like current events, that kind of stuff. He was really self-taught and a self-made man. He was a big inspiration to anyone who knew him. So he was really curious. He had like a curious way about him. He was a funny guy. He had been married to my yaya for 62 years, and it was an arranged marriage, and they had 3 kids. Their daughter is my mom. My papou was a farmer and a rancher for his whole life, and for part of his life he also worked for a steel company, but there was a horrible accident at the steel company and it crushed his hips, so he always suffered from pain as a result from that. And that happened early on in his life, but he was just a bear of a man. He just worked anyway. It didn't matter if he was in debilitating pain, he just did it. He was like the biggest guy you would have ever seen, like this deep barreled chest, just like, oh, just a barreled chest, kind of like a Great Dane almost, you know? And he had these hands that were like so big. His one nail bed was the size of 2 of my nails. They were the biggest hands I'd ever seen. They were coarse and calloused, and I don't know how he was so dexterous with them, but he was always fixing something. He was always working with tools or working with his hands somewhere if he had some downtime. He was a really generous guy, just so kind, and he was so funny too. So he would sit on his porch, and people would walk by, and he'd be like, come here a minute, and he'd sucker them into a conversation where he could give them advice about their whole life. He loved to tell people what to do, and it was always with a good intention. He always wanted to help someone, but sometimes you just couldn't hear about some old man's decision about what job you should do. So for example, one time he told me, he's like, you gonna listen to me for a minute? That's how he started off every conversation. You gonna listen to me for a minute? I was like, yes, papou. And he said, the public transportation system is hiring. They're hiring bus drivers. Okay. Are you gonna apply? No, papou, I don't want to be a bus driver. Well, they make $40,000 a year. Yeah, but then I'd have to drive a bus. And he just thought it was so strange that what you didn't want to do correlated to what you actually didn't do. Like that kind of thought wouldn't even cross his mind, you know? He didn't want to work 7 days a week, but he had to, you know? Like a farmer has to work 7 days a week. So it just didn't even comprehend that I wouldn't want to be a bus driver, so therefore I wouldn't be a bus driver. That wasn't a thought process he followed. And then my yaya would come in, and she'd get so mad at him. She'd be like, Jimmy! His name was James. Jimmy, she has a degree! She went to college! She's not gonna be a bus driver! She would get so mad when he'd have these quirky ideas. Me being a bus driver. We heard some really cool stories, just in the community of different ways that he touched people's lives, and like some really funny stories because he was a quirky guy, and just some really touching stories. Like I didn't realize this, but if it was like snowing, he would get the tractor, you know, he had a tractor for his farm, and he would like plow everyone's driveway. Not the sidewalks, but he would do the driveway of everyone's house, like, in like a 3-mile radius. He would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and just plow everyone's driveway, and no one ever asked him to do it. But he was just neighborly like that. Stand-up guy. He, like I said, he was a self-made man, so he ended up owning quite a bit of property and making some wise investments, and was able to live rather comfortably in his old age and retirement. And as his health and my yaya's health declined, it was really fortunate that he had such a nest egg to fall back on. Some funny things. He was just a funny guy. One time we were at a barbecue, and he was eating horseradish sauce. Just plain, just a gob of horseradish sauce. And I was like, "Papou, do you like that?" I was like, "No." And he'd take another bite. And one time I caught him eating orange rinds. I was like, "Papou, why are you eating that? Do you like it?" "No." He would still eat it. No one told him to eat it. I think it was that, like, old school mentality, like, you don't waste anything, even if it's an orange peel. I just chuckled whenever I saw that. I have a cousin who's Down syndrome and autistic, Apollo, and Apollo's pretty low functioning as far as that scale of low functioning or high functioning. But my Papou and Apollo were just like best friends. And maybe it was the autistic sides of them, but like Papou was always so kind and gentle, and would always go to doctor's appointments with my aunt when she would feel overwhelmed, and he would always tend Apollo. And I don't know how much exposure he'd ever had to people with disabilities, but my Papou was always so friendly to every one of Apollo's friends, and they all loved him. And he just wanted to hug everyone and give people kisses, and it was so cute. When I came home from Korea, we were sitting at the counter, and we would be talking, and he'd ask me about Korea, and I'd tell him, and then he would just give me kisses. Like, he couldn't stop himself. He just had to give me tons of kisses because he had missed me. And then he wanted me to sit on his lap, and I was like, "Papou, I can't sit on your lap." And he's like, "Kukla, come sit on my lap." And Kukla means doll, like my doll. It's a really endearing term for a girl. So I was kind of like positioning my weight, redistributing my weight so it wouldn't be on his lap. Excuse me. But I couldn't hold it up much longer because I don't have much core strength. I gotta get in shape. But he always wanted people to sit on his lap. I remember as a little kid, just a wee lass. I would sit on his lap, and he would pat my head, and he would pat so hard I felt like I had like a spinal cord injury because he had no idea about his own strength. He just had the biggest hands ever, and yeah, he had no idea about his strength. So yeah, he called me Kukla, and I lived with my grandparents until my dad came into the picture when I was 8 years old. So they're really important to me, and of course my yaya is still really important to me, and I think we have a similar disposition, my yaya and I. She's so kind and like loving, and she gets really nervous around people, and so she struggles with like crowds and stuff. But yeah, what else about Papou? There were some funny stories told. He was a funny old man. I'll just show you a quick picture of him real quick. I'm gonna make it a copy for everyone. Can you see that? The other way. Yeah. Look at that. My art teacher once said that there was more character in that man's nose than people have in their entire face. He was a really friendly guy. So, okay, if you ever saw My Big Fat Greek Wedding, you would see that the Papou there had, like, strange solutions, like home remedies, and his was, like, Windex, put Windex on everything. My Papou's had a couple of different ones. One was noni juice. I don't even know what it was, but you couldn't go into the house for, like, a year without hearing the benefits of noni juice. You put it on a cut, you put it on a burn, you drink it. It's supposed to make you be immortal, I swear. And my cousin, she had broken her thumb, just shattered it, and he wanted to put this noni juice on the skin. And I was like, but Papou, her bone is broken. And he's like, oh, the noni juice is good. And so my cousin's like a sport, and she like let him put on the noni juice, but I told you he doesn't know his own strength. So he's like, he like has her thumb, and he's like, okay, we're rubbing the noni juice. This feels good, doesn't it? Oh yeah, this'll feel good. And my cousin is just like, oh, trying not to cry, you know? She's like, yeah, Papou, it feels good. And I mean, it was always with the intent to help and be helpful. That was his intent with every interaction with other people. He had these like little fixations. He loved to work on sprinklers. If like a new person moved into the neighborhood, he would introduce himself and say, "Hey, if you ever have problems with your sprinklers, let me know, and I'll fix them." And normally, what he would do is just like order one of us grandkids to fix them, and he would just oversee the project. And so one time they were fixing someone's sprinklers, and it was my cousin. It was her turn, and it was like one of those like rain spring. I don't know what they're called, but they shoot like a way far away, like their cylinder, you know, and they just come up and they shoot really far, and so he's like, turn it on. So Helena twists the knob, and the sprinkler just comes straight at his face, and he was like, and anyone else would have probably fallen back or gotten mad about that. It didn't even faze him. He's like, now turn it off for a minute. And then he'd tinker around a little bit. He's like, turn it back on. And then it would come back and hit him full force in the face, even stronger. And he's like, okay, that's better. And he just loved to work on sprinklers. Every single person has worked on sprinklers with him, I think, in our entire neighborhood. It was like one of the things he loved to do. And one time this neighbor kid was flying a kite, like really, like as high up as you could ever imagine a kite could fly. And he's like, come here a minute. He always started conversations like, do you want to listen to me for a minute? Like there was actually ever any option not to. And so the neighbor kid comes over, and Papou tells him, tie that kite to the mailbox. And so the kid's like, no, I think it'll fall down. He's like, no, and then you could just watch it. So he ties it to the mailbox, and the kite just like goes, ooh, and like just crashes and breaks on the ground because it was so high up. My Papou is all like waddling away with his cane, didn't say anything. There was this like old guy who would ride his tricycle back and forth, and Papou really wanted to ride his tricycle, but because he had a hip accident, you know, back in the day, he couldn't do it. He couldn't ride a bicycle. And everyone was told him, you can't ride a bicycle, Papou, you know, because you could fall. And he was just so big, like, I don't know, he never got hurt, but like he was electrocuted more than once, and he didn't even blink an eye. He was just had a little shock. But one time I walk in on him trying to get to Helena's bike and my cousin's bike, and he has like one leg lifted over, and he sees me, and he's like totally, oh, I got caught, oh no. And he was like, I got your bike out for you. And I was just like, okay, thanks, Papou, thank you. It's on my bike, and we both know that you're gonna steal it, but go out for your ride around the neighborhood. But he was a funny guy. He was so funny, and he was just so loving, and always wanted to be around people and his family, and like really patient. And you could tell him, you know, oh, Papou, that hurt my feelings that you said that. And he would say, oh, I'm sorry, Dolly, I'm sorry, Dad, I love you. And he's just so cute. He's so cute. I know everyone's gonna miss him, because he was a really stand-up guy, and they don't make him like that anymore, you know? They don't make these self-made men who aren't, he wasn't an immigrant, but for all intents and purposes, he was, you know? He was seen as an immigrant. So I'm just gonna finish with like one of my last encounters with him. He was at the hospital, and I went and visited, and we didn't have anything to talk about. He didn't have his hearing aid in, so he couldn't hear. And he didn't have his glasses, so he couldn't see anyway. So I ended up having some coloring books in my bag for my nephews. And so I asked him if he wanted to color, and he said yes, and he picked out the picture of like fish. Then I asked him what color of a crayon he wanted, and he said sky blue. He's very specific. So I give him the sky blue, and he puts this, crayon in his hand, and it just looks so dwarfed to his monster hands. And, excuse me, he starts coloring. And he says, I haven't done this since I was a little boy. And he's 86. And it's like, yeah, it's fun, huh? But then he'd make a little tiny squiggle, and it was light blue, and it wasn't big enough, and he kept on checking the crayon to make sure it was working all right. And he's like, no, Papou, you have to make big strokes. You have to make it, And he was like, oh, okay. So then we were coloring in the hospital for a little while, and his eyes eventually were bothering him, so we didn't do it that long. But he said he had a lot of fun, and he wanted to do it again. And I wish I would have. He really went downhill after that, and just became kind of catatonic and unresponsive, but that was really fun. Like, he was always willing to do something fun or new, whatever it may be. Like, you could take him to the zoo with you could take him to coffee. He just wanted to get out of the house. One time, my cousin and I took him out to, like, a sporting goods store and put him in an electric wheelchair, and he just had a grand old time. Actually, we all got on wheelchairs, those electric wheelchairs, and we were, like, racing around the sporting goods store, and, like, he was doing these backing, like, circles in reverse. He just thought that was so fun. He was totally a child at heart, and just a good guy, good provider, did well by his family, and it's like a testament to what people can do in this country, when you have your mindset. Because, he died pretty well off, right? Not so much as before, because his health was so deteriorating, along with his wife, that a lot of money went into that. But, I dare say he hit his million, at least, probably 20 years ago, he hit $1 million in assets, and he was a blue-collar worker. He was a farmer and a steel worker, and he just lived really frugally and, like, within means, and had not necessarily a big family, but a lot of responsibilities. And it's really inspiring to know someone like that, but it's also really sad, because of course we just love him. He's a really funny guy. He'd call up with the random things to tell you, and just these random ideas he totally wanted to convey, and yeah, I'm gonna miss him. So here's to my Papou. I love you, Papou.